What footage does convince you that paranormal things exist? Story 1. The UFO of Vora, actually the city I live in Portugal. One day, about 56 years ago, there was a phenomenon here in which two flying objects are seen in the sky dropping large amounts of spiderweb-like material foam, like rain. They soon left, but the material remained. No one could guess what it was since it has never been seen before. Since the material fell very near to a school, actually about 100 meters from my house, they took some samples, put it under the microscope on the classroom labs, and then found that inside those webs were tiny organisms that reacted to the touch, which means that there was life on them. This weird material fell from the sky and had life on it. The tiny samples were immediately sent to Lisbon to be studied. The part of the building where they stored the samples and the results of the tests burned mysteriously a few days later, consequences of a fire. If you understand Spanish or Portuguese, here is the documentary about it. It's especially very creepy and amazing at the same time to me because this was my school and is right next to my house. To think that such thing happened so close creeps me out. Edit. I found a different video in English about it. Story 2. 62 school children in Zimbabwe see a UFO land near their school grounds and the two humanoid aliens that come out of it. Hysteria ensues. Word of this incident spreads the globe and researchers come to interview them. Their retelling appears genuine and consistent. Answer. The guy in that documentary, Dr. John Mack, is a Harvard psychologist who studied UFO and abduction experiences and became convinced that these experiences weren't products of mental illness or hallucination. Also, astronauts. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets, which obviously are a little more technically advanced than we are here on Earth. Colonel Gordon Cooper, Mercury Gemini astronaut. I happen to be privileged enough to be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet, and the UFO phenomenon is real. It has been covered up by governments for quite some time now. Captain Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14. Astronaut. I've been asked about UFOs, and I've said publicly I thought UFOs, were somebody else, some other civilization. Astronaut Eugene Cernan, Apollo 17. Commander. I was testing a P-51 fighter in Minneapolis when I spotted this object. It looked like a saucer, a disc. About the same time, I realized that it was suddenly going away from me. And there I was, running at about 300 miles per hour. I tracked it for a little way, and then all of a sudden, the darn thing just took off. It pulled about a 45-degree climbing turn and accelerated and just flat disappeared. Captain Donald Slayton, Mercury astronaut. For nearly 50 years, the secrecy apparatus within the United States government has kept from the public UFO and alien contact information. We have contact with alien cultures. Astronaut Dr. Brian O'Leary, NASA, CIA, Army, Air Force ETC. Unknown objects are operating under intelligent control. It is imperative that we learn where UFOs come from and what their purpose is. 1. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs, but through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe that unknown flying objects are nonsense. 2. Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, first director of the CIA, 1947-1950. We had a job to do, whether right or wrong, to keep the public from getting excited. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, scientific consultant for Air Force Project Blue Book. Of course, UFOs are real and they are interplanetary. The cumulative evidence for the existence of UFOs is quite overwhelming, and I accept the fact of their existence. Air Chief Marshal Lord Hugh Dowding, commanding officer of the Royal Air Force during WIU. We must insist upon full access to discs recovered. For instance, in the La case, the Army grabbed it and would not let us have it for cursory examination. J. Edgar Hoover, first director of the FBI. This flying saucer situation is not at all imaginary or seeing too much in some natural phenomena. Something is really flying around. The phenomenon is something real and not visionary or fictitious. General Nathan Twining, U.S. Air Force, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 1955, or DZN, 1958. Unidentified flying objects are entering our atmosphere at very high speeds, and, obviously under intelligent control, we must solve this riddle without delay. Rear Admiral Delmar Farney, USNR, rocket scientists, physicists. It is my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. There is no doubt in my mind that these objects are interplanetary craft of some sort. I and my colleagues are confident that they do not originate in our solar system. Dr. Herman Oberth, the father of modern rocketry. I am completely convinced that UFOs have an out-of-world basis. Dr. Walter Riedel, Chief Designer and Research Director at the German Rocket Center in Peenemünde. The least improbable explanation is that these things are artificial and controlled. My opinion for some time has been that they have an extraterrestrial origin. Dr. Maurice Biot, leading aerodynamicist and mathematical physicist, the possibility of reduced-time interstellar travel, either by advanced extraterrestrial civilizations at present or ourselves in the future, is not fundamentally constrained by physical principles. Dr. Harold Puthoff, Director, Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin, author of Fundamentals of Quantum Electronics. Soviet. U.S. Presidents. The phenomenon of UFOs is real. I know that there are scientific organizations which study the problem. It must be treated seriously. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not constructed by any power on Earth. President Harry S. Truman. I don't laugh at people anymore when they say they've seen UFOs. It was the darndest thing I've ever seen. It was big, it was very bright, it changed colors, and it was about the size of the moon. We watched it for 10 minutes, but none of us could figure out what it was. President Jimmy Carter. I looked out the window and saw this white light. It was zigzagging around. I went up to the pilot and said, "Have you ever seen anything like that?" He was shocked, and he said, "Nope." We followed it to Bakersfield, and all of a sudden, to our utter amazement, it went straight up into the heavens. When I got off the plane, I told Nancy all about it. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside of this world. President Ronald Reagan. Anyone is welcome to provide evidence that a quote is legitimately out of context, and I will remove it. All credit to ULX for compiling these. Sources can be found at many are on video, in context. For example, this one. It is recognized that quotes are not proof. However, there is compelling evidence that UFOs are physical phenomena, not imaginary or hallucinatory. They are captured on radar that only detects physical objects and perform feats not explainable by known physics. 95 of sightings can be explained by known phenomena, but about 5 cannot. Source: the Cometa Report, published by the French government. Part 1, Part 2. Let's follow. The argument. 1. Categorization of phenomena. As cannot be identified despite the abundance and quality of the data. 4 to 5 of all reported cases fit this category. 2. Radar visual cases comprise about 20 of this type of sighting, over 500 cases in total. 3. Conclusions include the prescient opening sentence that the UFO problem cannot be eliminated by mere caustic and offhand witticisms. Edit. Take note. Top reply comment. The almost certain physical reality of completely unknown flying objects with remarkable flight performances and noiselessness, apparently operated by intelligent beings. Secret craft, definitely of earthly origin, can only explain a minority of cases. The extraterrestrial hypothesis certainly has not been categorically proven, but strong presumptions exist in its favor, and if it is correct, is loaded with implications. Regarding physical evidence, there is little to none other than trace evidence, like evidence of exposure to high-powered electromagnetic fields in grass where craft are said to have landed. However, the trace evidence is very interesting. List of physical trace cases, totally worth a glance. Physical. Trace cases and articles about them. Radar evidence. UFOs defy known physics. Object tracked on multiple radar flying at 5,000 mph. Also making 90-degree turns. One case of many. General resources. UFOevidence.com. A very thorough resource on UFO evidence of all kinds, including scientific studies, reports, and testimony from all sectors of life. A great book on the topic. Very objective and rational. UFOs. Generals, pilots, and government officials go on the record by Leslie Kean, UFOskeptic.org, run by professional astrophysicist Bernard Heisch, was recommended by EU. Rask Science Mod Ubidi, who also created and maintains Amassy.com, a fantastic scientific resource in its own right. FAQ. The government wouldn't cover it up. The U.S. government didn't acknowledge the existence of Area 51 until last year. Why would they be interested in us? We're interested in bugs and bacteria and atoms. Nothing is too small or insignificant for our interest, so being interested seems to be a sign of intelligence. Why wouldn't they be interested in us? More to be added later. Evidence of UFOs is compelling to the extent that to deny their existence is tantamount to science denial. Earnest study of available information makes it impossible to come away with the impression that they could be fictitious or hallucinatory. While this comment is just an introduction, it includes sources that can be explored to satisfy any doubts. Much more here. Story 3. There was this recording. A lady started recording her sleeping because I think she was talking in her sleep or something. Then when she was playing back one of the recordings, she said, "What are you doing?" And a male voice responds. It was just her and her kid in the apartment. That was creepy. Edit. Your goddamn link. Answer. This sounds just like someone talking to themselves in their sleep. For what it's worth, I record and edit voices for a living, so I'm pretty familiar with actively listening to speech. I tried hard to hear it as a different voice, but I strongly doubt that it is. It's late, so I'll put my initial thoughts in bullet point form. OP stated that she didn't remember being awake that night. "What are you doing?" Was higher, as if spoken to a child. "It's them," sounded lower, as if murmured by a tired person. Disclaimer. I am not a sleep scientist, but I've heard some sleep talkers, and they can say some weird random shoot. Therefore, it's conceivable that these were sleep-talking utterances. There was some spectral analysis done on this recording, but I'm skeptical of its usefulness. The Redditor doing the analysis showed a spectrogram of the "it's them" and detailed the fundamental frequencies, harmonics, but didn't compare them to the earlier speech. Also, spectrograms of speech can make us feel like we're seeing the sound, but our ears hear insanely small details when it comes to speech. It's not so much about the pitch as it is the timbre, which is like micro variations in pitch. A clarinet and a sax can play the same note, but sound different. Why? Timbre. And, to my ear, all the speech in the recording has a similar timbre. As far as the clicks go, I have no idea what would be causing them. However, their level versus the voice makes it seem to be happening right by the phone. I find the idea that an intruder is making loud-ass clicking sounds right next to a sleeping person to be a little far-fetched. Not impossible, of course, but, Occam's razor and all that. Maybe the child was playing with something? I'd have to look into that a bit more to say anything. Definite. I'd be happy to do some analysis myself if anyone cares. Although maybe no one wants to hear some guy ruin the scary story. As luck would have it, I left my iLock with all my software licenses at work while I'm on my staycation, but I'm back next Wednesday. Edit. In case anyone's still watching, I had a listen and a play. Here is the result of a little experiment I did. Have a listen, then read on. So I took the ing from "what were you doing" and cut it onto the end of "it's them." Usually cutting parts of words onto other words is super dodgy, and if the actor reads with a slightly different tone or energy level, then it doesn't work. So the fact that this cuts on so seamlessly, okay, if you ignore the remnants of the click, and the fact that the result isn't a real word, even surprised me. Sound is a very subjective thing, and it's easy to hear something if you listen hard enough for it, even if it's not there. Therefore, I don't know if my little experiment will change the opinion of anyone who's adamant that "it's them" sounds completely different. But to me, this clearly shows that the ing of "what were you doing" has exactly the same timbre and pitch as "it's them," thus it's from the same person. The clicks are a bit more of an enigma, so I can only speculate. I checked out the snore-stopping clicks from the Sleep as Android app, and they sound very different to what's heard in this recording, so I think that's out. The clicks do remind me of the sound of an oscillating fan trying to turn when its range of movement is blocked, but they vary in timbre and interval, so I'm not convinced that's the cause. Also, audible at the head of the recording is what sounds very much like handling noise, the sound you get from touching, rubbing a microphone. In fact, a link from the original post shows the movement graph go from flat, as you'd expect it to be, sitting on a table, to a huge peak at the time of the recording, so the phone was clearly picked up by someone at the time of the recording. So, in summary, I'm 100% convinced that all the voices in the recording belong to OP because they share the same timbre. The croaky ing from "what were you doing" is the clear link between them. The clicks I can't really explain or identify, and not knowing what was in OP's room at the time, anything I say about this would be pure speculation, and I think this topic has had enough of that. Story 4. This video is from the catacombs in Paris and creeps me out big time. Just can't understand why someone would be down there alone, and why he starts running is a mystery, but I feel is connected to something paranormal. When he drops his camera, sends chills down my spine. Answer. This is the only scary thing in this thread. The catacombs are absolutely terrifying. I can't even imagine being stuck down there without a flashlight. I remember reading about a tipsy girl who wandered into them and ended up dying of starvation. Edit. It was in Odessa, Ukraine, and she died of dehydration. Still, same scary shoot regardless of what country they're in. Story 5. This one, I first saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2003. It scared the crap out of me. This was in 1991, and the fact that it was on a very low-budget TV show enhances the scare factor. Answer. Impressive footage for sure, and very unsettling, but are we just supposed to take their word on it that this wasn't faked? They just say they are monitoring all of these different things without actually showing it to us, reassuring us that it couldn't have been faked, keeping the clinical tone to keep it believable, but honestly, I'm going to suspend my trust in their word before I suspend the laws of physics. Story 6. The Beauport phenomenon had quite a lot of people involved and left everyone scratching their head. Sorry for the cheesy ghost show, still the footages are quite convincing. If I recall, the phenomenon stopped after one family moved out. The exact location is in front of a school. Here on Google Maps. Story 7. I'd say the BBC and MSNBC reports on the hour-long Pam Reynolds brain surgery make a good case for the out-of-body experience, perhaps afterlife. In both reports, neurosurgeon Robert Spetzler states that he finds the testimony of the patient inexplicable. In this clip, he says he has considered but rejects skeptics' explanations for what she has said about what she experienced during her operation. It should be noted that, about paranormal things, the researchers who believe ESP exists mainly talk, not about amazing footage, but statistics from experiments. For the layman, it's pretty boring. Reputable scientists who have said they regard the statistics as interesting include Alan Turing, inventor of the programmable binary computer. Story 8. This video of an alleged encounter in the Barton mansion, a hooded figure walks out with a lantern and scares the life out of the two guys exploring the place. The sound of surprise and fear that the guys make this feel so legit, but I have no idea whether it is. Story 9. The Nightcrawler. I don't actually believe this is paranormal or in any paranormal things, but it was interesting nonetheless. Answer. Fresno Nightcrawler is one of my absolute favorites too. They did a bit on it on Fact or Faked, and they showed how hard it would be to replicate. The video you linked doesn't seem to show the original video, only stills from it. I believe it's fake though. Puppetry combined with CGI perhaps. It looks too good to be either on their own. The things are so weird. That's not a natural way for anything to ambulate. Story 10. Phoenix Lights, mostly because they flew right over me. Air Force flares was the excuse, no fudge way. Story 11. The Blockbuster video rental store ghost really freaked me out when it first leaked. Definitely an authentic reaction to such an event. Story 12. This may not be exactly what you're looking for, but speaking as a physicist, I think any footage relating to quantum mechanics should qualify as paranormal. I can understand the math behind it, but I can think of no reason why it should apply to reality, causing these eerie effects. Why should particles behave so drastically different if you measure anything about them? It's as if the particles are aware they're being watched. If there is to be any reasonable application of the word supernatural, this is it. This is the reality of magic. We can't predict the fact of it. We can only predict its consequences. The only reason we don't call it magic is that sufficiently explained magic is, instead, called science and taught in science classes. We sometimes forget that it never stopped being magic just because some scientists developed a theory to predict it. Would a wizard's spells be disqualified as magic if they followed the cause and effect of magical incantations and magical tools? Is quantum teleportation really so fundamentally different from magical teleportation because it's performed with machines and lab coats instead of wands and robes? Quantum mechanics is one of the two successful frontiers of physics, the other being relativity, which is its own kind of magical bending of space and time. You've probably heard that nothing can move faster than the speed of light, but did you know that you can still move 1,000 light years in less than a lifetime by slowing down your measure of time or compressing your measure of space? No wormholes or warp drives required. We know how to do it even in flat space-time. When relativity is fully mastered, we'll be using machines to not only tell time, but to tell time what to do. Finally, even though they're both comprehensive scientific theories, relativity and quantum mechanics seem to be incompatible. So there must be something more, some even greater theory that would predict both of these kinds of magic, as well as the unresolved observations about the cosmos that not even our current knowledge of magic can explain. Answer: there was a beautiful explanation of quantum entanglement on NPR a while back, but I can't find the particular clip I'm thinking of. The Google Matches link other clips. I probably won't do it justice, but I'll try. It described how you could pass a stranger on the street, and without your knowledge, a particle in your body and a particle in theirs can become permanently entangled, having identical, synchronized quantum states, and will remain so regardless of where you or the other person travels in the universe. So it's possible that you may have a real physical connection at all. Times with people you've encountered, your friends, your family, or even your enemies. It feels almost spiritual or even religious to consider, but it's rooted in something we can actually observe in reality. How I feel after writing that. Story 13. This always creeps me out. It's probably really fake, but the sounds and the way it walks are creepy as fudge. Answer: I'm gonna take a swing at it. It looks like it's just some person in some getup doing weird shoot. They seem slouched, have hair covering their face, and doing some strange walk almost like their legs are bound in some way. They are wearing white, which is glowing from the headlights, which IDK, if that's how it works, but there are explanations if not. Honestly, I feel this one is a clear human trying to freak people out, and the cameraman may or may not be in on it. Even though I'm fairly certain of this, I'm still very fudge creeped out by it. So IDK. I guess they did what they intended. Story 14. I have 3 things. There was one documentary called The Man Who Paints the Future, and it was about this old man in England who gets dreams probably once or twice a year. He dreams of certain things happening, world events, terrorist attacks, and whatnot. He then paints these dreams so he doesn't forget them. Every single one of his paintings have come true. On September the 1st, 1998, he painted a picture of 2 huge towers collapsing because of planes that had crashed into them. He even drew the surrounding buildings, and they all match up to the real buildings that surrounded the twin towers. He also painted the Statue of Liberty in the background, so it was undeniably New York. The man went to his local post office and had a photograph taken of himself holding the painting. He stopped next to a calendar, and the date was September 1st, 1998. The photograph was analyzed by experts, and they concluded that it was definitely from 1998 and hadn't been tampered with in any way. I didn't watch the entire documentary, but he also painted a couple more things over the years, accurately describing real-life terrorist attacks years before they would occur. That shoot was creepy dog my. Second one is The Boy Who Lived Before. It is about a young boy, I think he's like 6, who claims he has lived before. He claimed he was just going about his day and then a hole opened up on the floor. He fell into the hole, and he was with his new mother and new family. He describes in great detail about his family from his past life, what their house was like, and where they lived. Ever since the boy could speak, he spoke about his past life, and most often, his past mother. For years, he would ask his schools to call his past life mother to pick him up from school. Whenever he was scared or injured, he would most likely ask for his past life mother to take care of him. He claimed they lived on an island. I think its name is spelled Baru. The family and a documentary crew went to the island. The boy describes how he and his past life sister would go down to the beach to watch the planes land. The family gets a plane to the island, and because it has no runways, they landed on a beach. They did some further investigating. They drove around for days trying to find a house that the boy recognized. He eventually did recognize one, and they went inside. His descriptions of the house he made earlier were completely accurate to this one, even on the inside. They went to the island's historian and investigated. The boy claimed that his past life father was eliminated in a car crash.